Welcome to Fourth and Inches, episode 11. Absolutely bananas to think the NFL season only has just a few games remaining. For you fantasy football players out there, the playoff stretch is coming. For real football players out there, these games matter a lot. These next 4 to 5 weeks will determine who makes the NFL playoffs. We're starting to get a sense of who is for real, what teams are quality, and what teams appear to be a little fraudulent. Always be on the lookout for fraudulent teams because they present themselves every year. Big example of that is usually the Buffalo Bills, but I digress. Normally we discuss our weekend activities, but since Thanksgiving holiday will be upon us shortly, I think it is more than likely to describe what we are thankful for. So I will start with Jordan. Jordan, what are you thankful for?
One thing that I'm thankful for, which kind of flies under the radar, would be toothbrushes and toothpaste. Can you imagine what people were like before toothbrushes and toothpaste? Like, just imagine going like 3 days without brushing your teeth. Can you just imagine what that would be like?
I prefer not to. Big dental hygiene guy.
Yeah, literally like every time I eat and I just get food in my teeth, I'm like, wow. And I brush my teeth, I'm like, wow, what would I do without you, toothbrush and toothpaste?
Yeah, I agree. Those are definitely essential. Nate was talking about contenders in the NFL versus fraudulent teams. Also in life, just always got to be on the lookout for fraudulent people. You know, there are always people that are looking for your downfall. So
watch out for the fakes.
Thanksgiving, very thankful for the real people in my life who like to see me succeed. And to those who don't, hi haters. But definitely thankful for just my friends and family. And, you know, being able to have lived so well for 18 years. Not really many complaints in my life. So definitely thankful as well for this podcast and ready to get after it.
Nate, what are you thankful for?
Well, on a serious note, all three of us lead very blessed lives and definitely thankful for everything the good Lord above has given us, especially family and friends and all the blessings we have. But to get down to the nitty-gritty, one thing I don't think's talked enough about is the flat screen TV. That was a big innovation. I think it came out roughly a decade ago, maybe like 8 years ago. Don't know the exact timetable, but I know it's changed my life. Along with the HD setting, which was kind of hand in hand with the flat screen. You know, nothing like watching TV in the HD. You know, you see a 480p video upgrade to 1080p. Big difference, you know. Pretty crazy to think about. Thankful for a lot of things. Near the top of the list is the in-house toilet. In the 1800s, people had to take their talents outdoors to relieve themselves. But now, you just walk a few steps and you have a flushing toilet that removes all of your urine and fecal matter into the dark abyss that is the sewer. And you never have to worry about it again. All within the great comfort of your indoors.
Definitely big toilet guys here. Big toilet guys.
So I think toilet's very underrated, and I'm thankful for that this Thanksgiving season. And here we go with the Week 11 Rapid Recap, as brought to you by Nate Smith. Kicking it off, Ravens at Cowboys. Boys keep rolling, 9 in a row. They win 27-17. Dak Prescott, 301 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a made Gatorade cup in the trash can. Ezekiel Elliott finished with 97 yards on the ground as the Cowboys take care of business. Steelers at the Browns. Steelers win this one by a score of 24-9. Big Ben, dismal day, 167 yards through the air, but didn't matter because there was a heavy dose of Le'Veon Bell. 146 yards on the ground, 1 touchdown. Absolute manimal. Jaguars at Lions. Lions win this one by a score of 26-19. They just don't quit. They probably lead the league in most cause cardiac arrest in Detroit, but hey, they keep winning. Stafford, 278 yards through the air. No touchdowns, no picks. Chris Ivory led the game in receiving with 75 yards. Titans at the Colts. Colts won this one 24-17. Titans had a chance late to cut the lead or to tie it, but DeMarco Murray was stopped short on a 4th and 1. Marcus Mariota continues his dominating stretch. 290 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's been absolutely on fire the past 6 weeks. Andrew Luck finished with 262 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Bills at Bengals. Bills win 16-12. You know why, but I guess I'll tell you anyways. No one circles the wagons like Rex Ryan. Andy Dalton, 207 yards, 1 touchdown. Mike Gillespie had 72 yards on the ground. He was the leading rusher for Buffalo because McCoy left the game with a thumb injury. Buccaneers at Chiefs. Bucks win an ugly one, 19-17, in Doug Martin's return. Jameis Winston had 331 yards through the air, 1 touchdown. Travis Kelce had 108 yards receiving for Kansas City. The Bears at the Giants. G-Men somehow win this one, 22-16. Jay Cutler, 252 yards through the air, 1 touchdown. Rashard Jennings seems to be finding his form, 85 yards on the ground and 1 score. Dolphins at Rams in probably the ugliest game of the week. The Finns win this one by a score of 14-10, scoring all of their points in the fourth quarter. Tannehill led the comeback with 172 yards and 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Jay Ajayi finished with 77 yards on the ground. Patriots at 49ers. Pats won this one by a score of 30-17. Tom Brady, 280 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns, no picks. LeGarrette Blount, 124 yards on the ground. Teams that had byes this week were the Falcons, Broncos, Jets, and Chargers. And that's your Week 11 Rapid Recap. Kicking it off, the first game on our slate here for the in-depth analysis will be the New Orleans Saints traveled to Carolina to play the Panthers. Panthers won this one by a score of 23-20 on Thursday Night Football. This is an interesting game overall, a game in which both quarterbacks struggled. Cam Newton finished with 192 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. Drew Brees finished with 285 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. However, Drew Brees' yards came mostly in the second half. He was contained pretty well by this Carolina defense, who was able to squeak out the win. Guys, now this pushes the NFC South into a very interesting picture. The Saints and the Panthers now have the same record at 4-6. Tampa Bay sits at 5-5, and Atlanta sits at 6-4. So no team is really running away with this division. At this point in time, Jordan, who do you think the favorite is to come out with the NFC South title?
I think at this point it's going to be Atlanta just by default because they do have the advantage with their record. But really, this division is kind of open for grabs. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the Panthers ended up squeaking out this division. They still have a bunch of division games left, which would be huge for them to win. It is going to be tough, though, because they did lose Luke Kuechly. Nobody really knows what's going on with that guy right now or how long he's going to be out. But if they can get Luke Kuechly back in a timely fashion, I think the Panthers are going to end up winning this division.
Yeah, the Panthers, Saints, Bucks, I mean, they're all still in it at this point, but I really think the Falcons are going to hang on. This is going to be their year to not blow up in the second half of the season. I think they're going to hang on and win the division. I just look at the Falcons' offense and how explosive it is with the weapons. You know, Matt Ryan having his MVP season, Julio, Devonta, Tevin Coleman. Even Mohamed Sanu has been a huge impact player for the Falcons at times. So I just look at that, and if the Falcons can just keep playing good enough defense, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't hold on to win the division.
I would agree with Cray on this one. I do think the Falcons will end up taking the division. I think Matt Ryan is on an MVP type of year. Julio Jones, best receiver in football at the moment. So, I mean, I don't see any reason why they don't hold on. But it is the NFC South, one of the worst divisions of football, so anything can happen. Tampa Bay has been interesting lately with the return of Doug Martin. Definitely helps them out. But I do believe that Atlanta will hold on. They have the most talented team in this division. Although their defense is pretty horrible, I think their offense is enough to lead them to the division title, and we sure hope to look for that in weeks to come. Moving along. Our next in-depth analysis will come from the cold area of Minnesota. Minnesota beat the Arizona Cardinals by a score of 30-24 in what was a dramatic game. Cardinals dropped to 4-5. Minnesota improves to 6-4, 4-1 at home. That home field advantage and that new beautiful stadium has been paying off, it looks like. Both quarterbacks struggled in this game. We'll start with Carson Palmer. 198 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Sam Bradford, only 169 yards through the air, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. David Johnson had a dominant game, 22 carries for 103 yards and a score. He also had 7 receptions for 57 yards and a score, so he was everywhere. But despite David Johnson's efforts, the Cardinals still lost this game. They dropped to 4-5. The Vikings improved to 6-4. So as we take a look here at the NFC North standings, Detroit and Minnesota are locked in a tie, with Detroit owning the tiebreaker. They're in first place at 6-4. Another crucial Thanksgiving matchup this in a couple days. The Detroit Lions will play the Minnesota Vikings for first place in the division. Trouble in Arizona as the Cardinals drop to 4-5. Seattle continues to surge at 7-2. I guess we'll talk about the NFC North because it looks like the NFC West is pretty much decided, barring a Seattle collapse. Guys, the NFC North is still very competitive. Even the Packers in third, sitting at 4-6, can make a run. Who do we think is the most likely team to win the NFC North?
I think at this point, I know I'm going to kind of go against the grain here. I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers. They still have division games left against both the Vikings and the Lions, and I think when it comes down to it, you just got to trust in Aaron Rodgers. I think towards the end of the season, he's just a great player. He's going to make some great plays and really help his team to win. And I think if they can get healthy on the defensive end, I know they're without Sam Shields and Demarius Randall at this point, but once they can get those guys back in a timely fashion, the Packers are going to end up running away with this division.
I agree with your point about Aaron Rodgers. He is outstanding, but I'm just so turned off by how the defense has been playing for the Packers. It's just really been horrible. Yes, they do have a few guys out, but, with some lingering injuries, I don't really see them, playing exquisitely well. It's not like the Packers had, a top 5 defense or anything before they had injured guys. So just down the stretch, I think the Lions are playing very well right now, and their schedule really is not very hard except for a few games they have to play against Green Bay and Minnesota. So I actually think the Lions have a very good chance of holding on and winning this division. Right now, Stafford's throwing the ball as well as he always does. So if they just can play some inspired defense, maybe some timely defense late in games, I think they should be able to get the wins they need to, I don't think the winner of this division is going to end up with that great of a record, maybe 11-5 at most, 10-6 probably. But yeah, no, definitely looking for the Lions to hold on and take this one.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Christian on this one. I do not think Green Bay is well-suited to win this division. I mean, this past Sunday night, you look at what they did against the Washington Redskins. They got absolutely obliterated. The defense has just been absolutely horrid. I don't think they can carry them at all. I think that's too much pressure on an Aaron Rodgers who hasn't been himself this year, along with a non-existent running game in Green Bay. There's just too much working against them. I don't think there's any way they get it done. I think it comes down to a 2-team race between Minnesota and Detroit. And I do give the edge to Detroit based on quarterback play. Minnesota has the better defense, but Matthew Stafford has had a quietly very good year. The stats haven't been there the past 3 to 4 weeks as far as elite quarterback play, but he finds a way to win. He leads the league in fourth quarter comebacks this year. The Lions always seem to make it happen late in games, which could turn out to be a bad habit down the stretch. As Craig mentioned, I don't think anyone from this division is making a run in the playoffs, but at this point in time, I do think Detroit ends up winning the division. Heading to the afternoon game, we had Philadelphia Eagles at the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks won this one by a score of 26-15, and it really wasn't close. Carson Wentz struggled against the Legion of Boom. 218 yards, 2 tutties, 2 picks. Russell Wilson seems to be returning to form. 272 yards, 1 pick, no interceptions. CJ Prosise, the leading rusher for Seattle, before leaving the game with an injury, had 4 carries for 76 yards, 1 touchdown. Had a great long run of 72 yards for a score. Thomas Rawls came in and filled nicely. 57 yards on the ground for him. Leading rusher for Philadelphia was Wendell Smallwood. They ended up having a couple injuries at the running back position. Sproles and Matthews both went down with an injury, so Smallwood might be heavily involved moving forward. Jordan, I'll start with you. The Eagles now dropped to 5-5, 1-5 away from home. Do you think the Eagles could possibly squeak out a wild card, or are they just playing for fun at this point?
I think at this point we're going to be playing for fun. I mean, we have a tough Monday night game going this Monday against the Packers, which is going to be a pretty tough game to pull out. But I just think it's a matter of circumstance at this point. The Redskins somehow are 6-3-1. Giants are somehow 7-3 with that cake of a schedule. But really, I just think at this point it's just like not really realistic. But if for this game specifically, there's not really much of a surprise here. The better team in the Seahawks won this game easily. Nothing really went right for the Eagles. And I think to beat the Seahawks away, you're going to need your best playmakers to really show up. And it doesn't help when both Ryan Matthews and Darren Sproles go down in the first half.
Yeah, it's tough when you play in a division as tough as the NFC East this year. Dallas obviously playing out of their minds, and even the Giants and the Redskins both playing very good football and a mix of, pretty easy schedules. So for the Eagles, I agree. It's kind of just end of the season fun time. No real hope of making the playoffs. From Seattle, I'm very impressed with how they're surging as we're used to them doing at the end of the season. Their defense is playing as good as it always does, but Russell Wilson kind of getting into his groove as we've seen him do a few times during the end of seasons. So I think the Seattle Seahawks may even be the most dangerous team, up there with Dallas as the most dangerous team in the NFC. I definitely see those two maybe being on a crash course for the NFC Championship. So Seattle kind of running away with the NFC West and the Eagles at the bottom of the NFC East here. So no, I don't see them pulling out a playoff spot.
Yeah, as a Cowboys fan, it delights me that it seems like the Philadelphia Eagles definitely will not make the playoffs this year. However, the NFC East as a whole has been more competitive than I'd like it to be. Giants are sitting at 7-3. Washington's not going away. So I think that'll be an interesting division down the stretch. The Cowboys have to keep winning for sure to secure their division title. Cray mentioned Seattle always does this with their second half surge. They're 5-0 at home. It's just tough to beat that team in Seattle. So I think that's another big key for the Cowboys to keep winning. So if in fact that NFC Championship game does come down to those two teams, it'll be played in Dallas, and Seattle is worse on the road. As far as for the Eagles, I do think they have a bright future, but they need to figure out their receiving core and their offensive skill positions. Do not have a dynamic threat at running back. Do not have a dynamic pass catcher. I do think Carson Wentz has potential. He started off the season hot. Has been struggling recently, but, their receivers are not helping them out. In particular, Nelson Aguilar has been very disappointing. Jordan Matthews is probably their best receiver, but he's probably a 2 or 3 on most good NFL teams. So they definitely need to address that situation in free agency or the draft. But if Philadelphia can figure out their receiver situation, I think they can definitely be a threat in recent years. Sunday night was supposed to be a thriller. However, it turned out to be far from that. The Washington Redskins took care of business, beat the Green Bay Packers 42-24 on their home turf. Washington improved to 6-3-1, 4-2 at home. Green Bay falls to 4-6 and 1-4 away from Lambeau. Aaron Rodgers, I'll read you the stat line. It sounds pretty, but he didn't play that well. 351 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. A quarterback rating of 115, which sounds great, but really he was not himself, which has been the case most of the year. Kirk Cousins was lights out. 375 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, with a quarterback rating of 145.8, which is outstanding. Stars of the game for Washington continue. Robert Kelly, after assuming the starting role recently, 24 carries, 137 yards for 3 touchdowns. That's absolutely insane. A long of 66. This just exposed the atrocious Green Bay defense. Washington really did whatever they wanted. They gained 515 yards of total offense. Green Bay had no answers. And even if you have Aaron Rodgers on your team, you can't stop him. Even if you have Aaron Rodgers on your team, he can't dig you out of a 42-24 hole. Redskins dominated this game from start to finish, and it really was not close. Guys, it's looking like the NFC East has been very competitive this year. Key matchup this Thanksgiving between Washington and the Cowboys. What do we think about Washington down the stretch? Are they in line for a possible wild card? They currently sit at third in the NFC East.
I think they've definitely proved that they're a wild card team to this point. I mean, I think they've definitely proved that they're as good as the Falcons or either the Lions or the Vikings or any of these other playoff wild card contenders, and I think they can definitely end up coming up with that last wild card spot. I mean, they play timely defense. They have Kirk Cousins who's playing pretty well. They have some great offensive playmakers. I just think it's all lining up for the Redskins to make the playoffs yet again.
Yeah, the Redskins have been playing good recently. I don't know if I'm a huge believer in them as a team. I think this performance was obviously very good, putting up over 500 yards of offense, but I feel like that may be more of a product of the Packers' bad defense than the Redskins playing, extraordinary offense. So not a huge believer in the Skins. I do think they may be able to squeeze out that sixth playoff spot in the NFC. I do think the Giants are going to get the fifth spot, and then, the sixth one will be up for grabs between a few teams. You look at the Lions maybe, or another team out of the NFC North. But I think that's their only shot, is looking at the sixth seed, and, that's not guaranteed. So I think they're going to keep having to play good football. It's not like they have, a cake schedule going forward. They have to play some tough NFC teams. So I'm not a huge believer yet in the Redskins, but, we'll see how they play these next few games, because every game counts at this point, obviously.
Going to come with a bold prediction right here. The Redskins have, 6 games remaining. I'm calling that they lose 5 of their next 6. They play at Dallas, at Arizona, at Philadelphia. They play the Panthers, the Bears, and the Giants. I think they win against the Bears. I think they lose all those other games. They're going to lose at the Cowboys this Thanksgiving. Cowboys are just a better team. They're going to lose at the Cardinals, who are a hungry team who are going to look to make a late season push. They're going to lose at Philadelphia because the Eagles play absurdly well at home, and it's a division game, which are always close. They're going to lose against the Panthers because the Panthers also are another team making a late season push in a weak division. They'll beat the Bears, and then they'll lose to the Giants, who will probably get a wild card berth from that win on January 1st. Their schedule down the stretch is absolutely brutal. Kirk Cousins has been good this year, but I don't think he'll keep it up through this key stretch of the season. I don't think Washington's defense is good enough to hold off against some of these elite offenses they're about to come up against. I mean, they did only give up 24 to Green Bay, but it was a strange game and where they were able to control most of the time possession. They won't be able to do that against teams like Dallas, Arizona, Philadelphia, and Carolina. So we'll see down the stretch. It is possible that they still squeak out a wild card because the NFC is kind of weak this year in the middle of the pack. But in my prediction, they do not make the playoffs. The Monday Night Football game was a real barn burner. We had the Houston Texans visiting the quote-unquote home team, Oakland Raiders. However, this game was played in Mexico City. A little bit of a higher elevation, so wasn't really sure what to expect for the players. Elevation has a big effect. But one thing we did come to know and love is the Brockett ship being continuously horrible, a.k.a. Brock Osweiler, paid $72 million this offseason to be a bottom 5 quarterback in the league. 243 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 pick. Brock Osweiler has been nothing short of horrible this season. While on the other side, Derek Carr has been outstanding. 295 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, leading the Raiders to yet another victory. They improved to 8-2. Lamar Miller, the one bright spot for the Texans offense, had 104 yards on the ground and 1 score with a long of 33. Latavius Murray and the entire Oakland rushing attack struggled. Murray only had 33 yards rushing. Guys, the Oakland Raiders improved to 8-2. Second, or I guess technically tied for first with the Patriots in the AFC. Do we think the Oakland Raiders could be a potential threat to the AFC title?
I think they will be a potential threat to the AFC title simply because I think they will be there. I think they're the second best team in the AFC by a long shot. I mean, you have the Patriots. I think everyone's just kind of playing for the opportunity to lose to the Patriots in the AFC Championship. So I think the Oakland Raiders are that team. I think they're the second best team in the AFC. I think when it comes to playoff football, anyone's really got a chance. So I think if the Raiders get there, they'll definitely have a good chance of making it to the Super Bowl.
I think as far as teams that will likely play the Patriots in an AFC Championship game, I do think the Raiders are the leading candidate. However, I haven't really been impressed with some of their wins, against a team like the Houston Texans. They were down in this game for quite a while. Actually almost looked like they would lose it if the Texans would have gotten that 4th and 1 late in the game. But yeah, a few of their wins just haven't impressed me very much. So when I look at them coming into Foxborough in late January, I certainly feel very confident as a Patriots fan that we'll get that win. But as far as biggest threat, I do think the Raiders take that title just because they're playing probably the best football in the AFC right now. And, surging into playoffs is always a good thing. So definitely the Raiders are the biggest threat, but still it just seems like, no one's playing as consistent as New England.
The AFC West has been lights out this year with the Chiefs, Broncos, and Raiders all having at least 7 wins. So I think it's a big possibility that all 3 of those teams make the playoffs in the AFC. But yeah, I do believe the Raiders happen to be the second best team in the AFC. They have an absolutely electric offense. Their defense has been improving over recent weeks. Haven't been good, though. If the defense can just be mediocre by the time playoffs start, I think they can actually make a deep run. We'll see. I do think the Patriots are still a better team, but that is why they call it football. It's best man wins on that certain day. You never know what's going to happen. So I think that would be an entertaining game, to say the least. And now the final segment of the show. This one's for the kids. Fantasy heroes and fantasy duds of Week 11. I'll start it off. Hero, David Johnson. What a day, young David. Just been the absolute model of consistency this year as far as fantasy numbers are concerned. His lowest scoring game of the entire year was 10 points. This week, 22 carries, 103 yards, 1 touchdown. Also contributed through the receiving game. Had 57 yards and a score there for 27 total fantasy points. So shout out Mr. David Johnson. You are a baller.
My fantasy stud this week has to go to one Jay Cutler of the Chicago Bears. Put up a steady 12.4 points in my league while playing with a torn labrum. The dude is just grit personified.
My fantasy hero hails from my Belichick's Bombers team, and it is Captain Kirk himself, Kirk Cousins. Put up his highest point total of the year, 27.4 points, 375 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Pretty much had a flawless game against the Packers, so thank you, Captain.
As we move to duds of the week, this was kind of a tough one to pick for me, honestly. A lot of my players played well this week. But I think I'll have to go with Brandon Cooks. He would have been fine if this was a PPR league, but unfortunately it's not. Because he did have 7 receptions, but only for 42 yards, which ended in 4 points in fantasy standard scoring. So, Brandon, it's okay. I still believe in you. Looking for you to rebound this week against the Rams. But Brandon Cooks is my dud of the week.
My dud of the week has to go to Jay Cutler's favorite target, or should be favorite target, Alshon Jeffrey, who put up 0 points mainly because he was suspended 4 games for PEDs. Who knew? Obviously, I didn't because I started him.
My fantasy dud comes from the Brady Boys, one of my favorite fantasy teams. And at my running back 2, I decided to start Isaiah Crowell, who happens to play for a team with no wins. So if your team can never win a game, you're probably not putting up a lot of fantasy points. So, Christian, why'd you start him? Who knows? But anyways, 8 attempts, 10 yards. And then on the receiving end, 5 catches for 13 yards. All added up to a grand total of 2.3 points. Definitely not what I need out of one of my starting running backs. So, Isaiah, you won't play for the rest of the year. All right.
ESPN should just make a rule where it's illegal to start any Browns players. That'd probably help a lot of people. Anyways, the Week 11 episode has drawn to a close. We had a good time. We hope you had a good time. For now, I'm Nate Smith.
I'm Jordan D'Souza.
And I'm Cree.
Thanks for listening.